A Boeing 727 vanishes into stormy skies. $200,000 in ransom money never seen again. A modern airliner sends frantic smoke signals before plunging into the Mediterranean with 66 lives lost. And in the world's most tech-connected era, a plane vanishes, leaving only a trail of cryptic satellite whispers. These are just the first of the 7 levels of plane mysteries, each deeper, stranger, more haunting than the last. From forensics breakthroughs to cases where evidence has simply evaporated, unraveling these stories isn't just about solving puzzles. It's about what's truly at stake when answers slip beyond our reach. How do some disappearances leave even the best investigators powerless? Thanksgiving Eve, 1971. A man calling himself Dan Cooper boards Northwest Orient Flight 305 carrying a briefcase and a plan. 36 passengers and 6 crew settle in for the short hop from Portland to Seattle. Minutes after takeoff, Cooper hands a note to a flight attendant. He claims to have a bomb. His demands are precise: $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck waiting in Seattle. The airline complies. On the tarmac, passengers are released. The money and parachutes are handed over. Cooper's instructions to the crew are clear: fly south toward Mexico City at low altitude, landing gear down, flaps at 15 degrees, cabin unpressurized. Somewhere over the dense forests of Washington, he lowers the 727's rear stair and disappears into the night, cash in hand. The FBI launches NORJAC, the Northwest Hijacking Task Force. Over 800 suspects are scrutinized. The search zone stretches across miles of rugged terrain. No body, no parachute, no sign of Cooper surfaces. But he leaves behind a single, ordinary-looking tie on his seat. The tie, later sealed in FBI evidence, becomes a rare scrap of physical proof. Years pass. The FBI logs every ransom bill's serial number, hoping the marked cash will surface. Forensic teams scour the tie for hair, skin, anything that might hold a clue. The bills, printed for tracking, remain missing. In 1980, a boy digging in the sand along the Columbia River uncovers 3 bundles of cash, $5,800 in decaying 20s. The serial numbers match the ransom. The money's weathered state suggests it spent years buried, carried by the river or the shifting shoreline. For the first time, investigators know Cooper made it out of the plane with at least some of the money. Yet, the rest of the ransom vanishes. The trail runs cold. Retired agents recall the scale of the manhunt. The dead ends, the false confessions, the suspects who never quite fit. The tie, now analyzed with modern DNA tools, offers only partial genetic profiles. The marked bills, tracked for decades, yield no further hits. The Boeing 727's unique rear stair becomes infamous, prompting design changes across the industry. The Cooper case remains the only unsolved hijacking in U.S. history. Despite a mountain of evidence, the truth stays just out of reach, leaving behind a shadow of uncertainty, a handful of clues, and a legend that refuses to fade. On May 19, 2016, EgyptAir Flight 804 vanished from radar over the Mediterranean, carrying 66 people. Search teams recovered debris and the flight recorders within weeks. The data revealed a rapid sequence: smoke alarms triggered in the lavatory and avionics bay, followed by electrical failures and a sudden loss of control. The cockpit voice recorder captured the crew's urgent responses: alarms, terse commands, then silence. ACARS messages confirmed the timeline, logging system warnings just before the aircraft's descent. French investigators at the BEA analyzed the raw data in Paris. Spectrograms from the cockpit voice recorder mapped out the progression: smoke sensor activations, electrical faults, and the sound signature of fire. The BEA's technical team pointed to a likely electrical arc or oxygen-fed blaze, possibly in the cockpit or forward cabin. Their charts mirrored known Airbus A320 fire incidents, showing a minute-by-minute breakdown of systems. Notably, forensic engineers found no evidence of a high-frequency shockwave or blast on the audio, details they argued ruled out a bomb. Egypt's Civil Aviation Authority, with its own custody of evidence, reached a different conclusion. Their forensic labs reported traces of TNT on passenger remains and galley debris, interpreted as proof of sabotage. The Egyptian report cited deformed metal and outward blown wreckage as signs of an explosive device, referencing early claims by extremist groups. French experts challenged these findings, highlighting incomplete chain of custody and the absence of independent verification for the TNT results. They noted that international standards require multi-lab confirmation for explosive residue and warned of possible contamination after recovery. The official record split. The BEA's summary supported a fire scenario, grounded in recorder data and system failures. Egypt's report maintained sabotage as the cause, based on their forensic analysis. Airbus technical advisors sided with the BEA, citing maintenance logs and a lack of credible threats. Independent chemists called for peer-reviewed reanalysis, pointing to gaps in the Egyptian lab's documentation. EgyptAir 804 remains a case where data is abundant, but consensus proves elusive. March 8, 2014. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 vanishes from civilian radar with 239 people aboard. As search planes and ships scour the South China Sea, engineers at Inmarsat, a British satellite company, notice something unusual. Despite the aircraft's systems going dark, its satellite terminal continues to ping the network. Brief handshakes, automated status checks every hour. These digital breadcrumbs, known as burst timing offsets, trace a faint arc across the southern Indian Ocean. No one has ever used this kind of satellite math to track a missing jet before. Each handshake's delay and frequency shift, calculated by satellite engineers, reveals the plane's likely distance and motion. The final ping at 8:19 a.m. suggests the aircraft traveled south until its fuel ran out. With no wreckage in sight, investigators turn to ocean drift science. Dr. David Griffin, an Australian oceanographer, builds computer models to predict how debris might move from the southern arc. He factors in wind, current, and the Indian Ocean's unpredictable eddies. In July 2015, a flaperon, part of a Boeing 777's wing, washes up on Reunion Island. Forensic testing confirms it belongs to MH370. Over the next year, more fragments turn up along African coastlines. The barnacle growth and paint layers match the missing jet. Griffin's drift models suggest the debris could only have reached Reunion from a narrow section of the search arc. This finding prompts a major shift in underwater search priorities. Sonar teams scan more than 120,000 square kilometers of ocean floor, guided by the satellite arc and drift predictions. Yet the main wreckage remains hidden. The satellite pings and confirmed debris offer the clearest clues. Mach 370 likely flew on autopilot until fuel exhaustion, then entered a steep descent into the sea. Whether this was due to mechanical failure, crew incapacitation, or intent is still unsettled. What stands is a case that redefined the search for missing aircraft, where mathematics and oceanography became the only witnesses to a vanished flight. March 16, 1962. Flying Tiger Line Flight 739 departs Guam, carrying 96 people, 93 U.S. Army specialists, 3 South Vietnamese military, and 11 crew. The Lockheed Super Constellation climbs into the night sky, bound for Clark Air Base in the Philippines. At 14:22 GMT, the captain radios a routine position report. 280 nautical miles west of Guam, cruising smoothly. There's no hint of trouble. Scheduled to check in again an hour later, the radio stays silent. Guam Aeronautical Station tries to reach the flight. Nothing. Heavy static clouds the frequencies. Minutes become hours. By 1600 GMT, search and rescue protocols move into action. Controllers declare the uncertainty phase, then escalate to full alert as the scheduled check-in passes with no contact. By 1933, with fuel reserves exhausted, the distress call is made official. The largest Pacific search since World War II surges to life. 48 aircraft, 8 ships, over 1,300 personnel. They comb more than 200,000 square miles, scanning empty ocean between Guam and the Philippines. No wreckage, no oil slick, no emergency beacon. The ocean yields nothing. Aboard the SSTL Lenson, an oil tanker steaming through the night, crew members report seeing a sudden, brilliant flash in the sky. 2 pulses white at the core, reddish-orange at the edges, followed by falling debris. The location matches the flight's last known position. Investigators pore over the Guam radio logs, noting the abrupt cutoff in communication and the absence of any distress call. Security records show the plane sat unattended on the tarmac before departure, raising quiet questions about sabotage, but no evidence is ever found. With no physical trace, the official conclusion rests on the likelihood of a catastrophic mid-air event, possibly an explosion. The era's search and rescue technology, limited by vast distances and radio dead zones, leaves families and investigators with only silence. Flying Tiger 739 becomes a lesson in the boundaries of Cold War-era aviation and the ocean's capacity for erasure. 96 are lost. The cause, like the aircraft itself, remains out of reach. November 8, 1957. Pan Am Flight 7, the Clipper romance of the skies, is overdue on its route from San Francisco to Honolulu. Hours pass with no word. The U.S. Coast Guard launches a search across the Pacific, eventually finding a scattered field of debris and 19 bodies nearly 900 nautical miles northeast of Oahu. The aircraft's main wreckage never surfaces. Among the fragments, investigators note distinct burn marks, but no signs of a mid-air explosion. 14 of the recovered victims wear life jackets. None have shoes. Several watches have stopped at 5:27, suggesting a violent impact with the sea. Forensic pathologists report elevated carbon monoxide in most of the bodies, enough to cause confusion or unconsciousness. The source remains uncertain. Some theorize a fire in the cargo hold, perhaps from flammable film reels, but the evidence is inconclusive. Official records reveal that Pan Am's Stratocruisers had a history of engine vibration and propeller issues. Maintenance logs, referenced in insurance files, show recurring complaints about engine roughness and overdue repairs. Yet the original paperwork, detailed logs, vibration test records, and engineering reports are missing from public archives. Without these, the mechanical failure theory hangs in the balance. Aviation historians point to the absence of a distress call. They note the possibility of a sudden fire or incapacitation in the cockpit, supported by the carbon monoxide findings and the lack of major fuselage debris. Insurance adjusters reviewing the case highlight the unresolved maintenance concerns and the airline's pattern of delayed repairs. The crash prompts scrutiny of Pan Am's oversight practices, but the Civil Aeronautics Board ultimately concludes that the cause cannot be determined. The fragments, the maintenance trail, and the missing paperwork leave only shadows, suggesting a technical failure, but never confirming it. In the end, the truth remains locked beneath the surface, hidden in records that may never come to light. Night settles over the Yukon on July 21, 1951. Canadian Pacific Airlines Flight 3505, a C-54 Skymaster, checks in by radio with the White Horse Station. 37 people are aboard. Passengers, crew, a handful of children. The pilot reports routine cloud cover and steady winds, then signs off. No further word comes. As dawn breaks, the news spreads through isolated outposts and fishing villages along the coast. With no radar coverage beyond the mountains, search teams rely on radio logs, scattered reports, and the memories of those who heard something in the darkness. Local fishermen recall the hum of engines overhead, out of place at that hour. A family tending the Estevan Point Lighthouse records a strange note in their weather diary. Faint, distant sounds, followed by silence. The keeper's daughter, years later, describes the night as unusually restless. Their logbook entry stands as one of the few surviving traces. Searchers fan out across the northern forests and fjords, guided by these fragments of testimony. The Royal Canadian Air Force and local volunteers comb riverbanks and timber stands, marking each possible clue. Planes sweep hundreds of miles, but the vastness of the wilderness swallows all evidence. No wreckage, no emergency beacon, no sign of survivors. Historians piece together the search through oral histories and yellowed government records. The lighthouse diary, preserved in a regional archive, becomes a touchstone for generations of investigators. Each retelling underscores the limits of technology in the early 1950s. Without radar, locator beacons, or coordinated search grids, human observation is the only guide. Theories multiply. A sudden storm, a navigational slip, or an encounter with uncharted terrain. Yet the facts remain as sparse as the landscape itself. The loss of Flight 3505 shapes how future northern flights are tracked. But the story endures in the voices of those who listen for help in the dark, and in the diary lines that mark the moment when a plane vanished without a trace. On January 30th, 1948, the British South American Airways Star Tiger set out from the Azores, bound for Bermuda, carrying 31 people into the night. The aircraft, an Avro Tudor 4, had already faced its share of winter Atlantic crossings, and this route was notorious for unpredictable weather and limited navigational support. Hours into the flight, the captain requested a radio bearing from Bermuda, receiving a fix that placed the plane about 340 nautical miles out. The Star Tiger acknowledged the message at 0317 GMT. No further word was ever received. The official inquiry combed through every available detail. Meteorological records from that night described stable conditions, with no electrical storms or severe turbulence along the route. Yet, there was an advisory for icing risk at the altitudes typically flown by transatlantic aircraft. The Star Tiger's captain, aware of these warnings, chose to fly lower than originally planned, reportedly to avoid the coldest layers of cloud. This decision put the plane closer to the ocean's surface, reducing the margin for error in case of trouble. Maintenance logs reviewed after the disappearance showed no critical faults, but investigators noted a pattern. Other Tudor 4s in the BSAA fleet had been forced to divert or land short on fuel during similar crossings. Internal memos revealed that fuel management and weather briefings were ongoing concerns in the company's winter operations. No distress call was ever received. Search crews from both sides of the Atlantic covered the Bermuda approach corridor for days, but not a single piece of wreckage surfaced. The inquiry highlighted the limits of 1940s aviation, weather data relayed by Morse code, navigators working with little more than dead reckoning and radio bearings, and no reliable way to track an airliner once it vanished from the ether. The Star Tiger's disappearance echoed in the loss of its sister ship, the Star Ariel, just a year later, reinforcing the sense of a fleet haunted by uncertainty. The official report could offer only possibilities. Icing may have built up on the airframe or engines, sapping lift and power. A sudden mechanical failure could have left the crew with no time to broadcast an emergency. Fuel exhaustion, complicated by the Tudor's awkward reserve tank controls and the low cruising altitude, remained a lingering suspicion. But with no debris, no distress call, and no survivors, the fate of the Star Tiger stands as one of aviation's lowest certainty cases. The records close with a single line: the cause of the accident cannot be determined. In the fog of the North Atlantic, the Star Tiger simply disappeared, leaving behind a pattern of warnings and a fleet forever shadowed by doubt. On March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 disappeared with 239 people aboard, one of 7 cases explored here, each marked by vanished lives and unanswered questions. Across 70 years of aviation records, investigators have recovered only fragments: a ransom bundle on a Washington riverbank, a flaperon on Reunion Island, and scattered debris in the Pacific. Official files, such as the FBI's Norjack case and BEA spectrograms from EgyptAir 804, demonstrate the reach and limits of forensic investigation. Yet in 3 cases, no wreckage was ever found. Today, black boxes, satellite tracking, and DNA testing have advanced, but the core challenges persist. Critical evidence remains lost, and some files stay classified. These mysteries reveal how, despite all progress, final answers are not always possible. Every unresolved flight is a call for vigilance in technology, search protocols, and transparency, so that the lessons of the past continue to shape the future of aviation safety.